terrific word. Baba liked the word. Your work will be done all in a second. I have these powers, there is no doubt about that.
So hooky is also Marathi?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, when we ran across it, we had a hard time finding it. So it's not Gujarati, it's not Hindi, but hooky is, Baba doesn't appear to have used it like the whim of God. He didn't use it in that context. He would use it in, when I get the hooky, when it arises in me. But it's a great event. He says, I can't create it has to come, it has to arise naturally. So that word comes up a lot here. I think it's an excellent word, I love it. And it was just a couple days earlier than this that
you got the audio.
Let's see where it is. It's in the 29th.
29.
Is that the 30th? Okay. The day before this. Yeah. Okay, so he's been talking about the skies and the asmans. Then he went into this, and this is really quite remarkable, I think. Now there is one further point to be brought to your notice, and this point is most important. Now look at this, when the avataric period comes, now I just want to say, Baba had not been characterizing himself as the avatar. I have a hard...
Do you know why? No, I'm asking, do you know why?
Well, I mean, Baba just began by representing himself as a Sadguru, Maharaj had said he was the avatar, but I have a hard time thinking of a time before this that Baba had said so. Can anybody think of it, such a case? And the word avatar has lots of meanings in Hinduism. It's like, you could be an avatar of Ganesh or all these things. It's not always the highly honorific sense of avatar that we have, although that's an important one.
I mean, of course, in the 30s, he finally gave a discourse on the subject of the avatar, but that was a while later.
So that was 1938,
yeah.
the first Meherabad journal. Yeah, and there were people who, somebody had a dream that maybe that Maharaj had said he was the avatar, or the word would come up and there were hints and indications here and there. But Baba was not characterizing himself that way. But in this passage, he seems pretty clearly to indicate that's who he was. When the avatar period comes, the avatar can do all that a Sadguru does. He cultivates a circle and prepares it just like a Sadguru. Okay, so he's distinguishing between avatar and Sadguru. But in addition, he does one special thing. That is, when a person who is not even in the circle gets turned, right? You remember that turning where you get onto the path. The avatar, can make him a salik. You know, a salik is one who is both advanced and conscious of the world at the same time.
And also what he says, and realized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said turned and realized.
Yeah. Am I not reading a word?
Well, you overlooked the phrase.
Oh, yes. Gets turned and realized. That's right.
Yeah.
It means God realized there.
Yeah.
He, the avatar, can make him a salik with creation consciousness as well as realization.
Wow. Yeah.
See, usually this is reserved for circle members instead of a majub. You know what a majub is? Someone who has the I am God experience and for whom the universe is gone forever, right? But he can make him salik also. And having done so, the avatar can give him a special duty. And this sentence in Gujarati means what we just said. Fact. At this juncture, Shri dropped reference to the fact that if he gets the hooky, a few selected from among the boys at the ashram may at once get realization and be brought back for special duty. But for this to happen, the time must come, along with the arising of the hooky.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? It has to kind of arise on its own. in its own way. Delving into this subject further, Sri cited the example of Sri Krishna, who brought down 17 extra persons after realization, all of them outside the circle. Indeed, one of them was a boy of only 11 years of age. Let me see, Sri concluded, who will get the apple? Isn't that funny? And here's another sentence. Pahuwata kunachya nasibata te ahe. Again, this is Marathi. Now we will see whose destiny it is. It all depends upon prem, love. So leave all of this. Have done with explanations and the like, and do only one thing, create prem. And I will do my part, not for 17 only, but for many as I like. I have that power. Have no doubt about that. So create and increase LOVE. And what is the meaning of this prem? It means one thing only, thinking of Sri and nothing else. I mean, he was telling them to love him. He wasn't holding back on that one bit. And if you do so, I have decided that among those whom I wish to bring down to consciousness again, I can't read the word, after realization, most will be boys. And so all of this spread of illusion, Aibada Pasara, means spread of illusion, you will see it all. How many among the boys will become saints? Only this morning I have told you this. The time is very near. After bringing all of this to accomplishment, Sri will come out. The hooky must come. It is very difficult to bring this about, but once it comes, everything will be done automatically. To some, I will show God. Some, I will make one with God. Can you imagine being with Baba when he says this stuff? So this is, I mean, it seems to me very clear, doesn't it seem clear to you that he was saying he was the avatar? There's
It's
hardly
almost like he is the one who's going to bestow that love on you.
Yeah, no, he's not hiding that one bit.
Yeah. And
So,
he says, come out.
this
Come out
was-
out of him.
Right at the time that explosion was happening. Actually, even over these times, some of the boys were starting to weep and cry already by the 29th of December, right as he was going through the plains. So again, I think that's another extraordinary feature of these talks, is this stuff going on in the middle of it all. Now, some of the other...
Ward.
Yeah.
So the next sentence said, and Shri continued for some time along these lines. But none of that is recorded?
Yeah, no, that's... I was just following the source. Let's see. I know, I would love it if we knew what that exactly was.
And the guy probably got tired of writing, so he had to take a break.
Yeah.
Pencil broke.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that's... and then he started getting into the first asana. Concluding in this topic, Sri returned to the main theme of the day's lecture and took up again the thread of his former explanation, explaining. And so now he starts to talk about the first plane and the first asana. This is actually where he started in that. So this was kind of an interlude that he put in that moment. You know, an amazing moment, I would say. Now, we're into the last 2 weeks of his series of talks at this point. Baba gave a description of the 7 skies, focusing on the skies. And let me see where I am. Sorry, let me get to some of... I'm just going to mention some of the topics he then went into. He started talking then about the skies and the plains from other angles of vision. And here's one of them. This is about the different stages in the spiritual journey, right? This is the divine theme, right? For some reason, it's not stone, it's metal, but metal, vegetable, worm, fish, bird, animals, human. First plane, second plane, third plane, fourth plane, fifth plane, sixth plane, seventh. Right? This is basically the divine theme. Although once again, reincarnation gets skipped over. Baba didn't emphasize. I think it's because that was not what he wanted these boys thinking about. He wanted them to get precipitated into the experience of the inner worlds, not dwell on bondage and reincarnation. But anyway, then this was my phrase, but mode of knowing. I think actually a very good word for it is Chaitanya. A good word for it in Meher Baba's own usage, he would call it Chaitanya. And that's a big word in India, means all kinds of things. But for Baba, it seemed to mean the consciousness at a given state qualified in some way or other, both by degree and by the quality of experience that you're having. So, best illustrated by some of these examples, like in fish and bird, it's instinct, right? That's a kind of consciousness, but it's sort of desires involuntarily impelling you to be conscious of this or that. So there are no indications, actually in infinite intelligence for metal and for plants sometimes, he would call it near Chaitanya, which means virtually no Chaitanya at all. Anyway, in fish, finite instinct, bird, less finite instinct. In animal, it's instinct, fully developed. But when you get to human form, then we have fully developed intellect. That's our mode of knowing. Our dominant central mode of knowing is the developed intellect, thinking about this or that. But now, here he gives the modes of knowing or Chaitanya as you get spiritually advanced. And I think some Baba groups would be interested in this. There's a lot of interest in intuition, right? There are a lot of groups who try to cultivate. Don Stevens was really a leader in this and all that kind of thing. Well, I think it's useful to have an idea where that actually fits in to the higher modes of consciousness as you progress. So this is an account of that. I think it would be worth a group spending a few days just looking at each of these and trying to plumb what they are. So the first plane is inspiration, and Baba makes it clear that this is something way beyond the inspiration of what a poet or philosopher gets. It's qualitatively different from that. That would be a shadow of this inspiration. The second plane is revelation. Third plane is insight. Fourth plane is intuition. That's where the real intuition comes from. And in another place, Baba said about this, for those with this intuition, their intuition is never wrong. It's infallible. It's always true. The fifth plane, illumination and ecstasy. The sixth plane, divine sight. That's your mode of knowing, right? You see God. And the seventh plane is realization. So this seems to me to be a really significant revelation on Baba's part about how qualitatively your consciousness changes through the spiritual journey. Here it changes not just qualitatively, but by degree, from most finite to infinite, right? Well, from this point on, you've got complete consciousness, but now there's a qualitative shift as you advance.
But when you say shift, does it mean that the one who gets to the sixth plane and get the divine sight won't have inspiration, revelation, insight? When we say shift, does that mean it transforms itself to just divine sight, or still they would have their illumination, intuition, insight or so?
Well, I don't, Baba, this is just a brief discourse, and Baba didn't exactly speak to that point. But I bet you lose it. But what you have is so much greater that, that's kind of left behind. But when you're on the sixth plane, you're no longer conscious of the second plane. But you don't need to be, because your perspective is much vaster than that would be. But you lose it. Somebody like, you lose gross consciousness when you become subtle conscious. It's gone. But you don't want it anymore, of course. So he has about 2 discourses where he talks about these things. So you can see it here. First plane inspiration. Here the initiate pilgrim remains for hours together immersed in an ocean of dazzling light. That is what we really mean by the word inspiration. And here's actually the Gujarati word, spurti. The worldly inspiration, as it is called, which poets and great thinkers and philosophers sometimes tap into, has absolutely no connection with this higher inspiration that awakens at the outset of the spiritual path, etc. So he goes through all of those. Again, I think this would be very well worth studying for people who are looking into these topics. Okay, another way in which he illuminates the experience of these higher planes is he goes through 8 different categories of bliss. You know the word Anand? A lot of Indians have that name, Anand. It means bliss. So he talks about the different kinds of bliss from the evolutionary stage up to God realization and beyond. And here it does look to me like the text is a bit garbled or incomplete. So I won't go into it in too much depth, but look quickly. Vishayanand, the bliss of sensual object enjoyment. Like you eat, Michael was talking about a donut. Or a tasty Persian sandwich, like we had for lunch. That would be Vishayanand. But he says this begins, starts from fish form. So he doesn't refer to any kind of enjoyment prior to that. I don't know, I think rocks have a good time sometimes. I think he doesn't do justice to rock bliss. Okay, Chintanand, the bliss of reflection. I'm just going to skip over these because there are too many issues. Yoganand, the bliss of yoga. This would be like a samadhi state yoga. And Premanand. Now comes our dear Premanand. And I think probably he's talking about it because a bunch of the boys were experiencing it and they all saw it. The bliss of love. And the fortunate one who acquires this kind of Anand wins the chance of turning. This makes you think that those first 3 are prior to the spiritual path. And I find that a little bit hard to believe. So anyway, there are lots of things to discuss about this, but we'll skip it for now. So Atmanand. So this is on the 5th plane, experienced by an arif. Arif is a term. Is that a Persian?
Yes.
Okay.
Mystic.
Yeah.
Arif.
Arif.
Yeah,
A mystic knower. Elsewhere, Baba would sometimes use the term wali for it, but he doesn't here. Arif is the term he uses.
Interesting that he is used here maybe, but
No, Baba used wali elsewhere, but in these talks, here in this section, he seems to use arif instead. And look, this is interesting, isn't it? The Arif who has arrived in the fifth plane, who experiences Atmanand, is continuously engrossed and absorbed in light, and experiences the Anand as ecstasy by the immersion in light. Now look at this. His eyes generally droop, half opened and half closed. Isn't that curious?
Yeah.
It's a nice phrase. Adi ugadi adi band. Half open, half closed. And for the most part, he remains naked, nagna or nude, like a digambar, or naked ascetic.
Digambar?
Yeah, that's a naked
Ascetic.
Sadhgurus too at times, when they get the hooky, this is the hooky again, go naked. A good example of this is Duniwala Bawa Sahib. Now, this seems to have been so this indicates that he was a Sadhguru, and he was alive at the time. So here's some information about another Sadhguru at this time, apparently. Who, though naked, is a realized and perfect being. Sri Upasani Maharaj. 2, remains almost in a state of nakedness, though he is perfect. But this fifth plane chap, there we have it again. This fifth plane chap, this chap over there in the fifth plane, this chap over there, this rock, and this chap over there, Paramatma. From the standpoint of the avatar, these are all God, all close, to return to him actually sees God, but only partially, etc. And then he has a sixth plane, Purnanand. This means perfect, complete bliss, or perfect bliss. And then there's a seventh plane bliss, which he calls Brahmanand, the bliss of Brahma. So that'd be bliss with a capital B. God is knowledge, power, bliss with capital letters. So this would be that bliss of God, the nature of God. And he actually gives an eighth, the Anand, the realized Shivatma. You know what a Shivatma is? Have you know that? That's a word worth getting to know. Jivatma is a Atma, a soul in bondage. A Shivatma is a God-realized Atma of any kind. A Majub, a Paramhansa, a Sadhguru, a Avatar. They're all Shivatmas. It's a good, useful, generalized term for that. Inherits after descending from the state of perfection is called Anand Anand or Sahajanand. So here, this is, again, an illustration of how he liked to end talks. So, dear boys, know that your luck is so good that it has brought you here to this place, so close to this Paramatma, this all in all that I have been telling you about. Create love and get your due. Get me. Once again. So that's a couple lectures. Now, these two are broach another whole aspect of characterizing the inner worlds. And the term that's used for this branch of study in the academic world is subtle physiology. And what that designates is a kind of microcosm-macrocosm relationship between the human body and the cosmos, or states of God. And you can find this in many mystical traditions. I think yoga has a lot of it. Taoist metaphysics has a lot of it also. And in other places too. Well, Baba gave we've already seen some of it with the mouth, and then remember how Pran breaks into 7 parts with the mouth and the 2 nostrils and 2 ears and 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs and trunk and private parts. So that's subtle physiology. You'll find some of it also in Tiffin lectures and an appendix on the subject there, for anyone interested. Well, this is an account that seems to talk about be using the human form and in particular the skeletal frame. It seems to be focusing, Baba doesn't use this word, but seems to be focusing on joints and hollows there. Unfortunately, the term used in textual study is corrupt. This is the most corrupt 2 lectures in the entire book. Corrupt in the sense that words are missing. Because it's typed, and they would leave blanks to be filled in with a Gujarati word or a Marathi word, and they never got filled in. I've had this problem before, but found manuscripts that had them filled in usually, but not here, unfortunately. So the words that are missing are the key, crucial words. So there's a good bit of guesswork here. And that's indicated both in footnotes and the endnotes. So anyway, you need to be aware of that. But anyway, by the way, do you recognize the foot? No, this foot. Yeah. So we just stuck that in there. So this is the significance of the 5 toes. The little toe corresponds to stone to worm forms. The next toe corresponds...
This little piggy went to market, wow.
Yeah, that's it. There we go. A new way of reciting that little nursery rhyme. Fish form is the next one. Bird form is the 3rd toe. Animal form is the 2nd toe there. And human form is the thumb toe. Okay, so that's the significance of that. But then Baba goes on to give a lecture first on the planes, and the next lecture is on the asmans and their correlations there. And again, just beware, because we had to make certain guesses because the words are missing. I think these are probably pretty good guesses, though. That's my thing. But the first plane corresponds to the ankle, right? Remember the 5 toes we just had.
Yes.
When the thumb toe is human. The ankle then corresponds to the first plane. The 2nd corresponds to the knee. The 3rd, the word is missing. But it seems to make sense that it would be the hip, because the 4th is going to be the shoulder or knee. So it sounds like he's talking about that big joint. But again, it's a guess. The hip, the 4th plane corresponds to the shoulder here. The 5th plane corresponds to something like the Adam's apple, right there. And the 6th plane corresponds to the point between the eyes. And the 7th plane corresponds to the crown of the head. So, and Baba then says, coming from the 4th plane here, if you descend down from here, there are 7 parts. There's the elbow, there's the wrist, and there are the 5 fingers. And Baba said those correspond to the 7 siddhis. You know what a siddhi is?
Divine power. Or
Yeah,
spiritual
cult,
power.
yeah, major power, yeah. Hindu term.
How do you spell it?
Siddhi, siddhi. It's very well known in Hinduism, Tantra, and many other branches of it. Probably in yogic study you get the siddhis too. And Baba makes the interesting observation that between the little finger and the little toe, there's nothing to break the fall, right? You go directly to the little toe. So this corresponds to the fact that when you abuse your powers, remember the little toe of stone form? You go back to stone form. So even that piece of meaningfulness is inherent in the human body, he says. And then I just have to keep repeating it. There are all these textual problems, and the endnotes are enormous for this. So anyone who wants to inquire into that, you'll have to read pages and pages of endnotes. Now, Baba says that the asmans correspond not to such junctures, but to hollows. Now that begins to sound to me like Pran and Akash, like the Akash side of Pran. So I'm guessing that there is that relationship. The planes are like the Pran and the hollows are like the Akash. I didn't go into this, I went over that very quickly, but Pran also corresponds to fullness and Akash to emptiness, which is like the mirrored version of the everything and the nothing, right? The everything is the real fullness and the nothing is the real emptiness. If you mirror that or refract that down into the illusory sphere, you get fullness and emptiness in the ordinary way. This looks to me like that. Baba didn't say that, by the way, but I'm just speculating that the relationship between the parts of the body, the planes and the asmans, is in fact of that nature. Well, anyway, this is again another just observation of mine. Baba didn't make this point, but I do notice, you remember at the fourth plane, the path goes around a sharp curve, right? Well, notice what happens in the human body at the shoulder. There's a sharp curve.
Oh, yeah.
So it strikes me
And you showed it too.
yeah, that significance may well be there. Now, there are real difficulties. This is, when we file our lawsuit against Chanji, this will be the second item, because Baba was surely pointing to parts of his body. And Chanji the sluggard, again, didn't bring his video camera. So we could see it and know what, so, we don't have a clear knowledge of what it
He didn't use the
was.
video on his cell phone either.
I don't think he
But-
used his
So
cell
maybe
phone.
then at that point maybe Baba wasn't communicating through that window if he was showing his body. Pointing to the parts of his body.
Yeah, I guess we don't know, but he could have pulled his feet out, or he would have been able to do it.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm just guessing Baba was pointing to parts of his body because he was so expressive that way. Yeah. But Baba says that the parts of the body corresponding to the asmans are hollows, or vacancies, or emptinesses. And the first one really does illustrate that. The first one is the ankle. We have that word. And the first asman is the hollow, the sole of the foot. That hollow. What do you call that?
The arch, yeah.
The arch of the foot, right? Which is a hollow. And he also said that in the human body, the points of the asmans are below the points of the planes in a straight line. And it's just a bitch of a problem to solve that. I don't know if you know Bob Aarons. Do you know Bob Aarons? Any of you?
Oh, yes, I know about Baba.
The doctor. So I spent 2 hours on the phone with him, going over the human body and trying to puzzle this out. So this one works, but after this, it's a bit of a problem. The best guess I can come up with, the knee is this, whatever you call this, on the back side of the knee. But it's not beneath the knee, so it doesn't fit that way. And Baba does say in a straight line, so I don't know. And the hip was just a guess to begin with.
I feel this point here, a point below the knee that is like a hollow.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
The problem is that he says the hollow is beneath the point corresponding to the plane. Beneath.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying here's my knee in the front. And then there is, if you just go here, not at the joint, but even
Lower?
on the lower, there's kind of like, at least
Okay.
Right here.
Yeah, below.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean it?
inside, no,
Which is
inside.
called the column.
Huh.
You guys have strange needs. Maybe. No, this is wide open now for, yeah. I'm just pointing out that that there's a lot of guesswork and there are real problems here, yeah. Now, as to the hip was a guess to begin with, but I spent hours with Bob trying to figure out what that could be. And so it's some kind of a hollow associated with the hip. I don't know what it'd be. There or whatever it is.
May I ask a question? This is completely outside of my ignorance in this area. I'm still a little bit unclear as to why Baba is using the parts of the body to explain the pran or akash and in turn the skies and plane of consciousness. I still don't really get it. I didn't get it.
Well, actually, Baba's going to come to an analogy, which, if you guys, this is the real task for the LA group. All those were just preliminary to the real one. And so I certainly can't understand it, but Baba never explained why he was doing it. But it seems to me kind of clear. He said the human form is the only form that exists.
Yeah.
So it's a microcosm to everything.
Oh.
It's
It's sort of a map.
yeah, it's a map.
The universe?
It's a map to everything in the entirety of creation, including the planes. It's all encoded
He
there.
did something similar later in God Speaks, where he's talking about the different cavities of the head. Which,
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning. Because there was a top point where he goes into something like that, where he talks about those same openings here and the sevenness of them. Yeah, so there's a case where the very openings in the face have that kind of universal significance, and also the limbs of the body. So Baba never gave a complete treatment of this topic, but here's what I think. The human body is such an unbelievable accomplishment in creation that spiritual truths are signified there in many different ways. Maybe the circulatory system has its own way of revealing, and the nervous system, and I mean, probably if you could see it, you would drop dead from wonderment at all the meaningfulness in it. So this looks like one way in which the skeletal frame seems to signify the planes and the asmanas. So that's what Baba wanted to show. So the fourth seems to be the armpit, right? And the shoulder is the plane. And the fifth, I don't know where it is. But it would be something hollow here, right beneath the Adam's apple, something like that, created by, I forget what these bones are called. The cervical or something. Clavicle, is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the hollow created by that or something.
This one here.
And with the sixth, Baba said they're so close to each other that it's hard to differentiate. The plane is there and the hollow is right around it. And for the seventh, there's no meaningful distinction at all. It's all there. So
Is it in the place that the babies have a soft spot there?
there is a hollow there, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe that's like the nothing within the everything.
Yes.
Might be. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So, once again, look at the things he was revealing to these kids. I mean, this is astonishing stuff. And once again, it's just a guess. We don't have any records, but you might say, well, how did they understand it? Well, Baba was right there and he would show it, you know. And hollow, he probably had some really great gesture for hollow, poko, and all of that. So I think they probably could get it perfectly well. remembering hollow and fullness and all that thing. And throughout these 2 talks, Baba kept saying, all of this is, say, here's where we go over it. The 4th sky or Asman, the 5th sky or Asman, the 6th sky or Asman, all of that. And those endnotes there, I'm just pointing to them again because there are so many issues, textual issues in this part of the book, more than anywhere else. Okay, and he says, remember, all these points of the body are exactly as I have indicated here. And again, that Bam Chanji, if he had just remembered to bring his video camera, we would know for sure. So, all of this has been given in the way of introduction. He's been saying that for 2 days. All of this is to introduce an analogy I'm about to give you. Baba kept saying that. Now, the analogy is quite intriguing. What it has to do with what precedes, that's your assignment, the LA group. All the previous things were just preps. This is the real one. Okay. Picture, in fact, I'll show this really quickly because there's no figure in the original, but we created an image of it just so that, to help give some visual form to what Baba is going to describe. This is done by Nadia, of course. So, look at it again in a minute. Picture a palace. It has a single door, but no windows. It stands on 3 pillars. It has 7 walls, one of iron, another of zinc. Why zinc? A 1/3 of silver, a 1/4 of gold, a 1/5 of stone, a 1/6 of wood, and a 1/7 of pearls. In front of the palace extends a compound with 3 ponds, one filled with water, one with milk, and one with rose water. Moving, and let's just take a look at this and just to recall what it all is. So the palace, it had to be done in a very small form here. And these are the 7 walls, right? And stairs going up into it. These are the 3 pillars. And the place where the palace is meant to be is right there. This is a blowout. And these
What
are...
is that blue one in palace? I thought there is no window.
No, that's,
What's that blue one in the palace?
there's no window.
It's a pool.
No, they couldn't show the inside.
Yeah, anyway.
Anyway, okay.
We did it that way. It's the beyond, not a window.
That's right.
So rose water, water, milk, and rose water. Those 3. Let's see. 7 tigers guard this lane. So here they are. See the 7 tigers. They're here, and this is an expansion of them. At the far end of the lane there blooms a garden full of sweet-smelling flowers. Surrounding each bunch of flowers is a mandap. That's a word like they'll have a wedding in a little pavilion kind of house. Like that. Surrounding each bunch of flowers is a mandap. Within each bunch of flowers is a snake. So you see, there's the snake drawn in. So these are the mandaps. And if you go under them, you get the bunches of flowers that are there. No. No, it doesn't.
But it's a garden full of mandalas?
Yeah, with flowers under them, yeah. When you emerge from the garden, there opens before you a desert. After crossing the desert, you arrive at a river. On the far side of a river, the river, arises a great city. And with this, our analogy is finished. Go for it.
Yeah.
But you got to link it to the joints and the hollows.
Really?
Because that Baba was saying all this is to introduce that. So that's your task. Maybe we'll set the Myrtle Beachers on the task too.
It would be nice. We can use our imagination.
So a race to see who. Okay. With this introduction and extended analogy, the whole of Vedanta is intellectually opened up for the one who is made to understand it. This analogy has never been given before. Adding one last detail to the analogy, in that palace which I have referred to is seated a king. Who would that be?
Himself.
So that's a real fascinating conclusion to this whole thing. I'll read this too. These things I have told you have never before been revealed by any among the saints. Now they are being revealed to you since the time is fast approaching. Baba kept giving them that sense.
Can you put the picture again?
Let's see a picture again.
Yeah.
There's the city at the bottom.
Yeah.
The city is there.
And what's that blue thing?
That's the river.
The river.
That's a river.
This is the desert.
Uh-huh.
And this is the garden, and these are blood of flowers in it. The lane with the 7 tigers, the 3 pools, the palace, the 3 pillars that the palace stands on.
Maybe the 7 tigers or the 7 plane of consciousness. Protecting.
It could be the
pilgrims.
7 desires.
Oh yeah, could be.
It could be that. I mean, I can guess the knowledge, power, bliss is the 3 pillars. What those 7 walls with stone and zinc and all of that. I have to say that pearls that defeats me. But it's quite intriguing anyway.
Well,
So
one can imagine a pilgrimage from the city across the river, through the desert,
that's what it
then
looks
getting
like.
through the garden where there's a snake under each bunch of flowers,
Yeah.
getting past the 7 guardian tigers,
Right.
and then finally you can go and say hi to the king.
It does seem broadly like that. This would look like the city of humanity as a whole.
Yeah,
And this is the edge of the spiritual path,
yeah.
turning, and you have to cross the desert to get to the subtle world, and maybe this is the mental world, and maybe this is the throne of God, something like that. Some broad guess could be. A lot of anyway, what that has to do with the joints and the asmans, I'll be damned if I can see.
Can I
Let's not go there.
intervene for a moment with a passage from the poet Tagore? He said, "When people come to know where my king's palace is, it will vanish into the air. Its walls are of white silver, and its roof of shining gold. And where is this king's palace? It's there in the corner of the veranda, where the tulsi plant is."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Now we come, let's see, what time are we at? Okay, we have an hour
It's time for a break.
time for a break, yeah.
You're gonna need a break before this one.
Okay. So that you have 10 minutes to come up with your solution.
Okay.
Okay.
We changed it all the time.
Erase everything you've learned so far.
We're still processing that
Okay, one more
analogy.
glimpse because, there we go. You know, when you get to St. Peter, when he has the book in front of you, he's going to turn right to this and say, okay,
By the
what's
way,
your
did you figure that
solution?
out?
Okay, take a break here.
We'll crack our joints.